When you plant lettuce, if it does not grow well, you don't blame the lettuce. You look for reasons it's not doing well. It may need fertilizer or more water or less sun. But you never blame the lettuce. Yet if we have problems with our family or friends, we blame the other person. But if we know how to take care of them, they will grow well, like the lettuce. Blaming has no positive effect at all, nor does trying to persuade using reason and argument. That is my experience. No blame, no reasoning, no argument, just understanding. If you understand and you show that you understand, you can love, and the situation will change. That's Thich Nhat Hanh. All right, everybody. So I had a little bit of an introduction already, but I am Molly Jacques. Hey, I'm Molly. I am Molly Jacques. I am a hand lettering artist. That's what I'm best known for. I am a part-time type designer, and I recently have taken on the title of entrepreneur. I've been starting, businesses in the face of uncertainty since I was like 23, and just now that I'm 30, I'm finally saying, okay, yeah, that's what I am. My husband, Cody, who's here, he's up in front. Woo, go Cody. He owns Terra Firma Bouldering Company, which is the space we were originally going to be using for this talk. So indirectly, I sort of own it, I guess. And more so, I run all creative aspects over there, in addition to my full-time work. I do like their social media, graphic design, photography, web design. I'm really none of those things, but if any of you are familiar with like being a part of a startup, you do what you can with what you have, and they have me, and so I try to like put forth my skills in the best ability that I can. So yeah, I'm best known for my hand lettering work. It's very fun and whimsical and colorful, and it usually has a positive message. I've had the huge honor of working with some amazing companies, like Nike, the Wall Street Journal, like they said, Disney, one of my favorites. I do a ton of like book covers for Disney. That's like one of my favorite clients. And I grew up just south of here in Caledonia. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with Caledonia. It's like a little farm town. Not really a farm town anymore, but it was when I grew up there. And, oops, here we go. I keep forgetting. Oh, and that was a graphic that we did for Terra Firma. And here's a little bit of my work. You can see it's like super fun, very positive message, whimsical. I focus a lot on positivity and encouraging people. This is a piece that I did for a Disney book cover. I keep forgetting that I actually had slides. Sorry, folks. This is a hilarious photo of my husband and I when we were younger. So I grew up in Caledonia, and in 2006, I moved out. I moved to Metro Detroit, actually Detroit proper. This was Cody and I when we first met, kind of like one of the first years we started dating. We met at CCS, College for Creative Studies, for those of you who are not familiar with CCS. And since then, we've kind of moved around a lot. After we got married, we moved to LA. We lived there for a little while. That's actually where I started doing hand lettering and calligraphy, was out in LA. Cody was studying with a painter out there, Jeremy Lipking. And then we moved back. Cody was getting his master's at Kendall, and we were living in Grand Rapids. We moved out to Detroit back again. And then about 3 years ago, this was me in LA. About 3 years ago, we moved back to Grand Rapids, and we bought one of those super old Heritage Hill homes. It's like 100-plus-year-old home, and I live there with Cody and my daughter, Juniper. I love this photo of her because that pretty much sums her up. And my 2 dogs, Fievel and Dakota, and I have 3 wonderful roommates. One of them is here today, Nate. Shout out to Nate. There we are in front of our house, very happy. There's Juniper. The photo is very blown out, but being a little model. So thank you so much to everybody who made this event possible, inviting me, Creative Mornings. I'm so honored to be here, and hopefully what I talk about today doesn't seem like an existential rant, but more so resonates with some of you folks. We will see. It is what it is. Today, I am going to be talking about intention. So this topic is very near and dear to my heart, of course, because I'm an artist and I have to put intention into the work that I create. But On top of that, I also have ADD, like legitimately ADD, so often I struggle with this concept of having good intentions but not being able to follow through with those intentions in the way that I really wish that I would. So there's kind of like a lot of struggle there, and I'm sure a lot of you folks can relate too. So here we go. So the reason that I opened this talk with a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh is because, first of all, I'm really inspired by his work. He's a Buddhist monk and an author. If you're not familiar with him, you absolutely should read some of his work. It's very inspiring. And secondly, I feel that this quote about using understanding as a way to show love and change things, I feel like it's very tied to this idea of intentions. So for this talk today, I want to talk about how mindful intentions have the ability to change our circumstances and help us either connect or disconnect with others. I want to start by talking about unconscious intentions. This is the part that I feel like gets a little bit woo-woo, but I think it's pretty cool. And how they impact and shape everything that we do. Next, I'm going to be talking about conscious intentions. A little bit about my artwork too, of course, and how I personally implement mindfulness and self-awareness to shape my own intentions in life and creativity, business, my personal life, all that good stuff. All right. Unconscious intentions. Okay, so what are these? You may be thinking Freud when you hear this word. He talked about unconscious intentions, but there's a lot of stuff out there about it. So for me, when I think of unconscious intentions, I think about our conditioning, our programming, kind of how we were brought up, how our parents treated us, what types of circumstances you faced at a very, very young age during your formative years, and how that kind of formed what drives you and your intentions that you might not even know anything about, which is very connected to any of the artwork that you create, especially for people who saw trauma when they're younger, things like that. It really impacts your relationships and your creativity and the work that you put out there. So for a lot of people, your unconscious intentions can be an absolute privilege. So, if you grew up in great circumstances or you had a caregiver that, was very nurturing, or maybe, like I said, you've been exposed to trauma, that can be an absolute burden on your unconscious intentions, and affect everything that you do in life. But for most people, it's like a combination of both, I think. At least for me, I can say it's been a combination of both. So I want to give you an example. Here, let's see. Oh, here's my family. There's my dad. I have a twin sister and 2 other sisters as well. So I want to give you an example of how my own personal unconscious intentions have impacted and changed my life and my connection and disconnection with others. So I grew up, of course, in Caledonia, like I said, in a Christian home, with 2 loving parents. They were very encouraging. They loved me. Most importantly, I felt safe. I felt loved and encouraged, and that's a privilege. Not everybody has that. There's us when we were little. So I was conditioned in a variety of ways in my formative years, there are things now as an adult that I have found are actually not quite so much unconscious, but they still are things that drive me that I kind of don't have as much control over, that they're just these deep-rooted desires and intentions that I don't have a lot of control over. And one that really stands out to me is I want to be able to connect with others through compassion. I want to be able to feel like I am connected with other people. And another one is that I want to be seen as special and different. And I think that often is like a defense mechanism from something. My parents were very loving. It's a defense mechanism from something in my formative years that, had me tell myself that I needed to be seen to have actual value in this world. And so we are in West Michigan, so I feel like a lot of people are familiar with the Enneagram. So by me saying that, you probably can say, oh, I know what number she is. I'm an Enneagram 4, of course. So how have my unconscious intentions impacted my art and my work and my life, my relationships, all this stuff? Well, for starters, the fact that I chose a profession to be an artist says a lot about me. And it says a lot about that desire to want to be seen and heard and feel different. And there's a lot of good that comes from that, but there's also a lot of bad. And you'll hear me talk a lot today about how our intentions and what drives us can be like equally like the best thing and also the worst thing in our lives. So art and creativity, it's given me an outlet to find purpose and meaning in my life. And the moment I start to feel stale or like, I'm doing something that just everybody else is doing, it's amazing that I have this great profession where I can say, okay, I want to just explore and be curious and try something new and let that drive the work that I create. So my art is pretty approachable. Like I was saying, it's very positive. It's not too aggressive or challenging. And I think this is rooted in my unconscious intentions, maybe ones that I'm not even fully aware of. Unconsciously, I make art that aims to please people, I don't like to make people feel weird or bad. It's funny because I think that I question things a lot, and I like to have conversations that are challenging. But for some reason, it's hard for me to put that into my art and to like actually put those conscious intentions into my art because I have this unconscious part of myself that just wants to please other people and be loved. And yes, positivity is good, but it's kind of this weird dichotomy, like wanting one thing, but then feeling so pushed into doing another. So my unconscious intentions have led me to, so this is more of my work, they have led me to, here we go, have deep and meaningful relationships with my family and friends. So I am a textbook introvert. You probably saw, I was like in the beginning here in the corner talking to my husband and my close friend. I'm not really good with large groups, and I hate phony relationships. Like, I can't handle phony relationships. And so I have been able to connect deeply with the people in my life, but a very small group of people. That's my friend Courtney. We were in Bishop climbing trip, my husband, my sister. But this has also been an unconscious intention that it's a two-sided coin, right? So it's produced such great relationships with people in my life, and the ability to connect with people at a deeper level than just like talking about small talk or like, phony shit. Like, I'm not into it. So, but it also has pushed me away from people in awful ways. So like often because I'm an Enneagram 4 too, I can have this sense of pretentiousness about me that can push people away, which I don't like that about me. I would love to be able to connect with people, even if it's not to like my standards of what not phony should be. So it's something that I struggle with, and it's something that I want to work on, and it's like an unconscious thing that I do. There's always something that's good can be something bad. All right. So my unconscious intentions, they have produced success in my career. My desire to be different and try things in a different way has made it so I have like been a risk taker. I've tried new things. So in when was it? I think it was like 2014. So 2014, I had been freelancing for a while, doing calligraphy. Mostly at the beginning of my career, I was doing like wedding calligraphy, but 2014, I taught a calligraphy workshop in person out in Ann Arbor at Pot and Box, if any of you are familiar with that. And people started asking about it, and they're like, what is this? Like, I can take a modern calligraphy workshop? Like, something that's hip? It's not just like, in my elementary school where we're like pulling out the tools and everything is so pristine. And I saw something. I'm like, nobody's doing this. I gotta do it. And I did it. I started teaching calligraphy workshops all over the country. So for like a year and a half, 2 years, my husband and I, I saw a lot of success, and he traveled with me. This was in Anaheim in California. This one was right in Grand Rapids. I taught here. I taught all over the place, and it brought me a lot of success in my career. So not only financially, I was able to make money because I was a risk taker and I wanted to be different, but also at like a personal level, going around and teaching, I was able to connect with people, which is what I wanted to do in the first place, is to actually like connect at a level that meant something. And a lot of these people, wanted to do this for a career, or, they were doing it for therapy. Like, I've had people who came through who had cancer, and they said, this was something that was just therapeutic for me in a time that was really difficult. And it's just so simple, but it meant something to me. So, like, having that, like, oh yeah, the reward of, like, making money from it, and also being able to connect with people was huge. Like, that's a great thing. a couple more photos. But, there's always like another side to it, right? So this drive to want to be different and to like make these decisions and to keep jumping around, it also has caused a lot of failure too. I struggle a lot with organizing things and staying on track with projects. So back in, I'm trying to remember the year, not that it really matters. So I was very excited about teaching classes online. And so this is like not a very fun thing to share. It's like embarrassing to share this, but when I'm sharing, like tooting my own horn of like, oh my gosh, I made all this money and I connected with people, I gotta share the bad parts too. So I was so excited about teaching online classes, and I had taught online classes before, and I decided to put together my own website with a variety of classes on there. Let's see, that's for a second. I decided to put together my own website, and sure enough, me being impulsive and excited, I didn't think it through well enough, and the website ended up crashing when we launched it, which is like sort of good because people were coming to the website, but it wasn't also because it like caused all these problems, and then I'll tend to be like, okay, well, this isn't working, so I'm just gonna go do something that's fun and different and cool instead of following through. And it was just like, it was a nightmare, and it's like not fun to share that story, but it's part of like this, unconscious self, like pushing me to do things that are good and bad, and that's just life, it's like both black and white together. It's like the yin and the yang. It's so important to like recognize that and move forward, which is going to be bringing me into actual conscious intentions. So where am I? Okay. So I know, yeah, everything's getting very existential, but I am someone who like questions my existence quite often, so bear with me here. So what does this all mean for all of you? It's not just about me, it's about us as a community, as individual people as well. So what does it all mean? Everyone sitting here, if there's anything you can take away from this today, what I hope for you to take away is to actually hold a mirror to yourself. Try to discover at least some of what drives you that you might not know anything about. Maybe the way that you were raised, how does it impact your art? The way that you connect with others, maybe you are in a relationship with somebody, like a romantic relationship, how does that impact the way that you communicate with them? Often it's easier for us to just say, I don't want to question that. I don't want to hold a mirror to myself. It's painful. It's painful to do that. But the first step of self-awareness is humility. Yes, it is so true. So the moment that I started actually looking to myself and trying to figure out, okay, why do I do things? What drives me? What are my intentions that I don't even realize that I have? I was able to start making change in my life and start like actually having conscious intentions, like having ways that I wanted to change my life. And so, for example, let's see here. Okay, this is a perfect example. Another thing that's not very fun to share. Here we are. Okay, here we go. Okay, so another thing. For those of you who know me, or even if you follow me on social media, I'm very open about it. I struggled with depression, and it's been something that has been a part of my life since my teen years, but recently, the past 2 years or so, it kind of hit me again, and it was super difficult, and a lot of my ADD stuff came back full force. I mean, it's always been there, but worse. And I know depression really is not that uncommon, so I bet there are a few people in this room right now who struggle with depression. It's not that uncommon, and that you can probably relate to this. So these things that you hate about yourself come back, and they're way worse because it's harder to control all these different things. But I don't even, by miracle, I was somehow able to, quite recently, about maybe a year ago, I was able to hold that mirror up to myself. And that is one of the scariest things to do, is to hold a mirror to one of the ugliest parts of yourself, but it's so valuable to do. And so I was able to hold this mirror up to myself and start looking at my depression and my symptoms for what they really were, a sickness. And at that point, I was able to start trying to make little steps towards change and have real intentions towards healing. And it affected my artwork because I was able to follow through with more projects and create and even be here today. I even talked to Molly. I'm I'm so sorry that I dropped the ball in the past, but right now I'm feeling good. Like, oh, that's such a beautiful thing to change. And it's always there, you're always gonna have to try, and I'm never saying it's like, one day you're just gonna be happy forever. Healing isn't linear, it's not like that. But it is good that I held a mirror to myself and I was able to see those things and I was able to make positive change, take these steps. It's very good. So I feel like this is a great segue into the conscious intentions. Here we go. Okay, so conscious intentions. So if our conscious intentions, or our conscious selves, if our unconscious selves are the lettuce, bear with me, I'm an Enneagram 4, our conscious intentions are the understanding and love. We need to stop blaming the lettuce for not growing and start understanding why it's not growing and if we can change anything. So we need to compassionately understand ourselves, all part of ourselves. And that's why holding up a mirror to ourselves is so important, because it's embracing, both good and bad, and it's trying to move forward with that. Okay, so moving into some of my artwork. So with my artwork, I have been kind of exploring this new voice, and I've been having to be very, very intentional about it, and it's progress. So as I show you this stuff, just keep that in mind, I guess. And I've been having to, let's see here. I've been wanting to actually connect with other people. So like I was saying, in the past, I'm super proud of the work that I've put out in the world. I really am. Very positive, very whimsical. It makes people feel good. I'm all about that. I think that's really good. But this is some work that I've done over the years, in the past. But like I said, what I've always wanted to do is connect with people and have them ask questions, have challenging conversations. I've always wanted to do that. So how can I move forward and be more intentional and kind of say, yes, my unconscious intentions want me to always please and make people feel comfortable, but how can I do that and also get people to question things and have a conversation about stuff? So with this new style that I've been sort of developing, I've been trying to do that. It's difficult to do. This isn't showing up very well, but this is previous work. So being very intentional, producing kind of new artwork, how does that happen? Every artist is a little bit different. So for me, you can see this is a Pinterest board. I have a couple different Pinterest boards of artwork that I was super inspired by. I've always wanted to do excuse me, I'm just trying to cue up my notes right here. I've always wanted to do very flat and graphic shapes with my artwork. This really doesn't have anything necessarily to do with questioning or conversation or anything, but I've always just been very drawn to that aesthetically. And I've always wanted to do it, but for some reason, I just don't. If you're an artist, you can probably relate. You have something in your mind's eye, and then you create something, and you're like, this isn't really what I wanted to do, but, it is that. So, but that's good, too. So I've pulled up a lot of different images that are graphic and very flat. I still really like the bright colors because I feel like they are approachable, and maybe if I wanted to talk about something that I felt was a little bit darker or challenging, maybe using bright colors was a great way to kind of connect those two ideas. That's an intentional decision, I'm not gonna just slap something together and say well, I hope that it gets the idea across, because that's not really the way that intentions work when you are creating artwork. You can see, and I really like that 60s, 70s, psychedelic stuff. So it's just funny, combining Charlie Harper with this type of stuff is sort of a weird thing. But in my brain, I was thinking, man, that would be cool to do something that sort of combines those different aspects of that I enjoy. These are not showing up. These are showing out really in. The color is not very good up here. I swear the color looks a little bit better in person. So this is kind of the work that I started creating. This was one of the first pieces that I did where I'm oh my gosh, I'm gonna try this very intentional personal voice. I'm gonna try to do it. And so I kind of created this. I wanted to explore these ideas of, the yin and the yang, which is of course, yes, it's very straightforward. I know, I'm working on it, but you gotta explore things to be able to get stuff out of your system and just figure out what's working, what's not working. And so there are a few things about this piece that I really liked, and I was good for me, I was intentional with this. It was super flat. it's so easy for me to want to do like add-ons, which I'll talk about here in a second, with my lettering to just like fluff up the lettering. And I started kind of like playing around with more like illustration and a little bit less lettering. I loved the flattened graphic. I liked this idea of like cosmic and like stars and outer space and using more like symbols in the work that I was creating. This piece is about depression, kind of goodness coming out of the darkness, sort of like what we're talking about here. A lot more stuff, kind of exploring these different, this different tone. All right, so I wanted to create work that starts a conversation, right? And I wanted to do that through symbols because I felt like my work in the past had been so literal, like words that looked pretty, which yes, there's a place for that too. But I wanted to do something where people had to look at it and be like, well, what is that, And I felt like using flat graphic shapes and making it very simple was a great way and a very intentional way to make the piece draw attention to just the symbolism, like not about the fluff. It's not about like flourishes on your letter forms, curly Q lettering that I've done in the past where it's like about creating that sense of whimsy. It wasn't about that, and I felt like the flat graphic really did a good job with that, and I've been leaning towards more like symmetrical composition. I felt like that kind of gives a certain tone to it. I mean, it's not like perfectly symmetrical, but I really liked that, and I felt like that was an intentional decision to do that, and I'm still developing that. Again, like the color is kind of weird on this, but I still liked working with lettering. Like lettering is just so fun and it's whimsical. And I think if I want to eventually develop, explore different ideas that maybe are a little bit dark, I think that lettering is like a great way to do that because it pulls in that whimsy with it, especially if I'm doing kind of like that funky lettering. It's just this great, juxtaposition. And I'm still figuring it out. I'm still growing. But that's what's so fun about being an artist is you get to do that. So I saw that the lettuce wasn't growing. I saw it. And I changed the environment. I gave it some water, and I gave it some sun. I wanted for it to grow. Now I'm seeing it. I'm just seeing it peek above the dirt, right? But I'm still waiting to make that big salad, the big salad. I like anyone that got that. So I'm still waiting, but that's all just a part of continually like watering it, giving it sun, changing the environment, and if I need to, and stop like blaming my old self. I don't need to blame my depression. Like yes, that is terrible. It's terrible for anyone who suffers with any sort of mental illness, but it's not who I am. It's not. It's something that I experience, and it's like a beautiful thing that right now I'm so fortunate to be able to like make those changes and look objectively at that. Okay, so where am I in this? Okay, so why is this so important to me? So bear with me. I'm just looking through my notes right now. Okay, so why is this so important to me? It shows that my intentions have changed my artwork dramatically. So you could see the shift from my work to begin with to the new work that I've been producing. It still looks like it was done by the same person, of course, because it was done by the same person, but it's changed, And like I was saying, the point that I wanted to prove, it has helped me connect with different types of people. So it has helped me connect more deeply with the people that already follow my work, whether professionally or just like through social channels. It has started creating conversations. The main thing that I've noticed is that like a lot of my fellow artists who like follow me on social media have started to like question their own work and their intentions behind it, which that's amazing. If more people would start questioning the work that they put out into the world, like it would be amazing. It would be just, I have no words for it. So yeah, it has helped me connect with other people. It's also, disconnected me from some people, the work that I'm producing. Some people just don't like to have to think about those things. It doesn't make them feel good. And I need to come to terms with the fact that that's okay. They don't have to feel good, and they don't have to view the artwork, and that doesn't make them good or bad. It just is. And it doesn't make me good or bad. It just is. You're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, and that's absolutely fine, and that takes a lot to say that if you're someone who just wants to please people and feel loved and feel different. So why is this important to you folks? Well, frankly, it doesn't need to be important. If you take away nothing from this, then that's totally fine. But I do think my story could possibly shift your thinking. I know a lot of you are creatives, and it could shift your thinking to maybe say like, okay, am I creating work intentionally, or am I creating work by accident? Am I creating work that is pushed by my unconscious intentions and things from my past? Like, what am I doing? Maybe you could start asking yourself those questions if you are interested in asking yourself those questions. And maybe you create work that just like popped into your head. So like, for example, with lettering artists, hand letterers love to just like illustrate the word hello, you know, or like illustrate one thing. And again, like, I'm not dissing that at all. Lord knows I have totally done it. Like, I have just like picked a word and I'm just like, okay, I like this word. But it just kind of depends on your intentions behind the piece. Were you intentional about the way that you created the word hello? Did you want it to evoke a certain emotion? What was the message behind it? Like, you can create work that just is seemingly simple and actually have intentions behind it. So I would hope to encourage that in other people if there's anything that I could do. But again, artwork doesn't always need to have like a function. It doesn't always need to be utilitarian. Like, sometimes it is just about the beauty of it, and that's it. And there doesn't need to be intention. So this isn't like oh, this is the way things are, me saying that. Okay, so here we are. Why are intentions important when it comes to business? Okay, so for me personally, I want to make people think more deeply about themselves. I want them to feel confident and loved. This is so important to me on a personal level and a business level. So the intentional steps that we take with our business, with my business, can help us connect or disconnect with others and change for either better or worse. With my business, I want to uphold these standards. I need to make intentional decisions in everything that I do, right? So I don't want to just mindlessly slap things together and like call it good and then hope for the best and like hope that someone feels those things that I wanted them to feel. And I feel like a good example of this is Terra Firma Bouldering Company. So this is a picture of my friend Kelsey. I wish she was here because she'd probably be stoked that I was using this photo. So Terra Firma Bouldering Company. So literally when Cody asked me to help with our brand values, which we just had a meeting about it the other day, we kind of talked about it, of course, when we first started, but we never really sat down and talked about it. This was the first thing I said, that we believe that all people should feel confident, strong, loved, and included. So this is something that has from day one been so important to like Terra Firma and who we are, both aesthetically and experientially. So we have been intentional about every single step of the process. Kind of, there's me smiling in the space. We wanted people when they walk in to feel like they could be a part of this and to feel happy, to feel good about themselves. We did this through color. So for the space, we kind of had everything sort of like black and white and gray and very neutral. And then for the holds, we had like a limited color palette for the holds that we were working with, but all of them were super bright and fun in colors. And another of our values is that we pay attention to the details. So we wanted the space and our brand identity to feel well designed to the extent it could be from someone who is not a designer designing it. So we wanted to do that, and again, doing it through color, through type, our website. We tried to do all these things through the whole space, and we're very intentional about the way that people felt when they walked in the room and when they view our social media, when they interact with our staff. We were very intentional about that. Here's some of our staff, our previous staff. They no longer are with us because they went on to do some good things in their lives. But we felt that our staff was possibly the most important checkpoint for making people feel confident, making people feel like they can actually do something that's kind of scary, like climbing. Like climbing is a very intimidating thing, And so we trained our staff to make people feel that way. The first point of that experience when they walk through the door is to feel welcomed. And I feel like we've done a pretty good job with that, So here we go. So yeah. So I think that the reason that this is important to not only me, but all of you folks here, especially if you own a business, is that being intentional about the work that you put out there for your business can create profit in your business, and it also can create connection and sustainability of your brand, you know? And this is kind of going back to like when I was teaching those calligraphy workshops that I was telling you about. So I was saying I made a lot of money doing it, and that's awesome. When you have money, you can do good things. You can put that towards change and good in the world. But also, which is equally as important, if not more important, I connected with other people, and I was able to form relationships. And when you do that with your business, when you take intentional steps towards like the experience that you put out there for your clients, you can do those things. You become more profitable. And when you're more profitable, you can like meet the needs of your people. You can connect. You can do good with that money. And so that's why intentions are so important for your business, at least in my opinion. I feel like the brands that really like last are the ones that are intentional and like actually care. Okay, yeah, so I know this has been a very like existential train of thought. So thank you for bearing with me, folks. So just to recap. So just to recap, I talked about our unconscious intentions and how they can fuel good and bad things, usually both, without us even realizing what we're doing. And I talked about our conscious intentions and how they can mold ourselves and how they can help us take steps forward and create connection in our lives or change if it's needed. Change is always needed, you know, we're always changing. So let's just say, yes, it is needed, change is. And again, if there's anything I'd like for you to leave today with, I hope that you wouldn't be afraid to hold a mirror to yourself. You know, ask yourselves what circumstances you can change and how you can let yourself grow. Face those things in your life that aren't so good. Like, you might realize that, like, the feelings that you get when you face those things that don't feel good are even better, like, because you feel like, I'm not trying to hide anything. I'm not trying to hide the fact that I struggle with depression. And as soon as I started not trying to hide that, it was, like, life-changing. Like, the fact that I'm here and, like, talking to all you folks about it is kind of a big deal for me. Like, people don't talk about that stuff. So I hope that you folks can take that away today. Holding a mirror to yourselves, loving both the good and the bad, smiling at the bad, smiling at the good, embracing it, and just doing your best to move forward with intentions. Thanks so much. Oh, okay. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I'll kick off and then we'll see who gets brave. This is kind of a technical question because I followed you for a little while, but how did you make the transition with like physical tools with your lettering and type design into, I know you do a lot of digital work, and how do you work today and what do you prefer?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I like worked like with actual tools in my sketchbook for a really long time, for years. And pretty much since like after maybe like my first year of doing calligraphy, I started doing more like commercial work and less of the wedding stuff. And so things needed to live in the computer, and nothing really even needed to be that precious in person. Like before, I was like writing on all these super expensive papers and things like that, and you had to spell everything right. So, which I'm not good at, surprisingly. Like I do lettering, and you'd think I'd be good at spelling, but I'm not. So I kind of like moved forward with digital stuff just like as a natural transition. Like my background is in illustration, so I worked in Photoshop a lot in the past, like creating textures and doing digital stuff, because that was sort of like all the rage when we were in school. Like it was just when people started, I feel like, doing a lot of like Photoshop illustration, at least editorial style, and so we got on that, you know, that train. And so I started off in Photoshop. I didn't even like have a Cintiq for a really long time, and I would just scan all of my artwork on my like good old scanner, and then I would just pull it into Photoshop in separate layers. And so that's how I was doing things for a really long time. And then I eventually got a Cintiq companion and did the exact same thing, but just like on a Cintiq companion, which you just draw on, and I could bring it with me places. And I heard of a lot of people using like the Surface Pro, and I just never got on board with that. And then the iPad Pro came out, and I was like, oh my goodness, everybody's like talking about this. And I convinced my husband, I'm like, can we drop like so much money on this thing? Like, and I'm like, okay, I'll make my money back. You know, I'm doing it. And sure enough, I did. Like, I made my money back right away, which is awesome to think about. Like, if you are considering getting an iPad Pro in here and you do like any sort of like illustration professionally, like I say, it's like worth getting. And so now my process is I mainly work on my iPad Pro. Like I said, it's paid for itself. I do like, if I want to do like type design, I do it in my iPad Pro, and it makes it easy, so I'm not scanning in lots of stuff and having to keep track of files. I can like take work and I can like email it directly to my clients. Like you can even just like take the Photoshop file and put it into your Google Drive, and then it just like you can directly send it to clients from there. So it's just awesome, and it's just cut down my work time, and you can get a lot of cool textures. And I make my own brushes, like my own hand lettering brushes, so it feels like it's still my lettering. But there still are some things that I just don't do on the iPad Pro because it doesn't. So I do a lot of like script liner brush work. I don't do that on the iPad Pro because I just haven't got it down where it looks perfect yet, you know? But that's like an entrepreneurial thing that I want to do, is be like, okay, so how can I fix that problem and like sell it? Like, and I've been trying to produce like brushes that are like exactly like my script liners, but I haven't got there yet, but I'm working on it.
I see Terrence, another tech designer.
Yeah.
So I think I'm always surprised at the variety of work that you do, from all the way from illustration to rock climbing, and like your ADD explains it.
Yes.
My question is like, how are you planning for your next diversion?
That's a really good question, and the answer is probably one that you would expect from someone with ADD. I don't do a lot of planning, and so that's why I was saying in the beginning of this talk, like the intention thing is an interesting topic for me specifically to be talking about it, because I'm a very intentional person, but like I don't do a ton of planning and organizing, and so honestly, like I kind of like follow my bliss, and so like if I find something really interesting, I follow it and like am curious and see where it takes me. But I do have to do certain planning with like real client work. Like I have to meet deadlines, I have to actually like send stuff, and so with that, I try to like plan things out. And with the gym, Cody will come to me and be like, I have this idea, I kind of need help with it, and so then there's that. But usually I'm just pretty intuitive when it comes to like following like new ideas or new plans or whatever, and then I just like to explore things, I guess. Does that answer your question? After I was answering this, I'm like, am I even answering this question? Like, yeah. Yes.
Can you talk about your transition from, working for a company or for business to freelancing, and then how you, so obviously you had to make some intentional decisions, but how you got traction to be full-time freelance?
Yeah, for sure. So when I graduated college, it was in 2010, and it was like at the height of the recession. So it was really hard to get jobs places. And that was kind of that. I was applying for jobs all over Michigan right after I graduated. No one was biting because like my education was in illustration, and like illustration is sort of like a random hard thing to find full-time work in unless you are like a freelancer, you know? So I was applying for like graphic design jobs, and I'm not a graphic designer. Like my portfolio was not good at all. And I didn't have any experience at all, other than like a sort of graphic design internship that, again, I wasn't a graphic designer. So anyways, we moved to LA, and Cody was studying with a painter out there, and I started working part-time freelancing for Sugar Paper. They're like a little letterpress they're not little anymore, they're huge now. A little letterpress studio, and I just was working part-time freelancing for them and working in their shop, their actual shop. And so that's kind of where I got my start freelancing, and that was a huge thing because they were a big client, and the fact that they gave me a chance and they put my work out there on their products, and it was like my first break, having that for my portfolio, I feel like I owe them my entire career because that's like what got my foot in the door with my freelance work. So when we moved back, the recession was still awful, and like I still couldn't get like a real job that I wanted to do. And so I was like, I really like doing this. I'm getting a lot of work with calligraphy. So out of necessity, I like moved forward with like wedding calligraphy because I was getting so much like work from it. Not a lot of people were doing it back then. But I knew I wanted to do commercial stuff. Like I wanted to work with like bigger clients and like work with ad agencies and that stuff. So I did a lot of self-promotion. And I think that that is like good, is to like reach out to blogs. Like I was like getting featured a lot on like Oh So Beautiful Paper, which was like a really big blog at the time, with like hand lettering stuff, and like getting my work in front of the right eyes was a big thing. Taking little jobs that I didn't want to take because I knew that it would like get me to where I wanted to go. Working really hard. Trying to not complain about my circumstances. And I wasn't making like any money, like barely anything, because, you know, like I wasn't taking on big jobs. And so then I just kept doing that. And it's sort of like, I think it was a combination of like right place, right time for me, and the fact that like I'm a go-getter and I'm a really hard worker. And like I like will think creatively, I think kind of put me in a place where I eventually, like, things really started rolling. But it took some time, you know, and I don't know, does that answer your question? And here I am to this day, I guess, yeah. What it means. So when I say that, hold a mirror to yourself, it means like look at yourself objectively, like the things that you don't want to believe about yourself. And sometimes that actually means like trusting the people that you are with. So like with my husband, he is totally one of my mirrors, and I can trust him. I know that he's not going to say things to me to manipulate me. Like if there's something that I'm doing that is hurtful to other people or hurtful to myself, I know that he's not going to tell me that just to hurt my feelings. So like having people that you trust, that's a good way, because there's a lot of things that you don't know about yourself, and you can't, like, you don't know what you don't know, you know? So that's how I do that, and I try to do it a lot, and I think my personality type is kind of like good with that. Like I like to know the truth even if the truth hurts. What was the other part of the question? Was that it? Okay. That too, reflecting too is good. Just like being self-aware, you know, and just working on yourself, I guess.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.